Welcome back to the second hour of our study. We're looking at the commentators on the exegetical commentators on the agape love. And we're on page 18 of those notes, which were actually last week's notes. There's still plenty of copies around. And on this set of notes, we're on Rejoices with the Truth. Is there a page number for that? Page 5. I noticed that the slide numbers didn't come out, that they came out dates instead, right? Today's date?
Yeah.
Instead of the actual.
And the timestamps on them. Yeah. Was that what you were hoping to get?
I was supposed to say.
9:22 a.m., 9:23 a.m.
It was.
Each of the slides are timestamps.
Okay, now it's supposed to be the actual slide number, but I didn't go back and put those in.
I think it was rather ambitious.
Well, I'm dealing with two different computers here. The new Mavericks doesn't let you use Word without buying a new version of Word. And so, and then I'm using Notebook on that computer, but I can't use Word on that computer. On the other computer, I can use Word, but I can't use Notebook. So I'm having to save things in different formats and transfer them over and all of that. And I forgot that I had to do all of that this morning because I knew I had everything ready. I just hadn't put everything on the right computer. Took longer than I thought it was going to. So that's why. All right, let's begin with the word of prayer, and then we'll begin this hour's study where we will conclude agape and then go into the fruit of the Spirit. And the fruit of the Spirit section is not nearly as involved as this. It's the result of all of this study is in the fruit of the Spirit section, not the actual reading through it to see what it is. Though I like this, I think it gives us a lot of good insight. So let's pray. Father, thank you for this hour. We thank you for the insight that we receive about your word and about our lives. We're thankful that we have your life within us if we but appropriate it by faith. We thank you that you give us these options to live our lives as Jesus would live them rather than the way we would live them in our own human nature. We thank you for it and ask that you show us how to do it. In Jesus' name, amen. Many commentators appear to miss Paul's point about truth. Fee contends that the term stands in opposition to evil in the sense of the gospel and all that is opposed to it. Behavior that reflects the gospel. But this use of truth occurs mainly in the later writings of the New Testament and abruptly introduces a fresh idea without preparation. Moffat simply equates truth with goodness. Would the addressees interpret this verse in either of these ways, and would Paul expect them to do so? Wolfe alludes to the joining of Adikia and Aletheia in 3 Ezra 4:33-39, which may shed some light on the relationship. However, Spick comes nearer to the heart of the matter when he explores the reason for the compound verb sugkariai, translated above as joyfully celebrates. With Barrett and Fee, Spick sees soon, the prefix, is primarily intensive. It shows the intensity and expressiveness of the joy in truth. But rightly, he goes beyond Barrett and Fee in understanding the with aspect of soon to denote active participation, with the classical meaning of congratulate, felicitate, or applaud. Agape's fundamental meaning to acclaim is plain here. What is it that love joyfully celebrates or acclaims? At one level, Chrysostom convincingly contrasts the truth about someone's well-being with reports about their supposed failure. Love feels pleasure with those who are well spoken of, as against enjoying someone's loss of standing. Right? So it goes back to what we talked about earlier in the last hour about not rejoicing when they're caught in wrongdoing. But probably the disinterested character of agape is even more clearly at issue. The proximity between postmodernity after Nietzsche and Derrida and the rhetorical stances applauded at Corinth place us in a better position to appreciate Paul's meaning than commentators from the medieval period to the 1980s. Postmodern philosophers and critical theorists perceive as clearly as Paul did that virtually every action and stance bears some relationship to the power interests of the self or to one's peer group. Genuine love, as I argue as my main thesis in interpreting God and the postmodern self, alone decenters the power interests of the self and of its peer group, and in recentering them in the other, primarily in God, but also in the other person, disengages from self-interest. Only now can truth emerge as disengaged from a power agenda. True disinterested integrity is free to seek truth without anxiety about what it helps or hinders in one's personal agenda. Love, Paul says, has discovered integrity. As Nygren constantly declares, because it is disinterested and creative of value, it delights in truth. The definite article with the abstract noun, ho aletheia, does not commit us to the translation of the truth, although admittedly it cannot be excluded. If the article is translated, it probably denotes the truth in this or that situation rather than gospel truth as such. The practical thrust of love joyfully celebrates truth, then, is that love does not use manipulative devices and subtext to protect itself from truth or from the truth. It is honest and open, not defensive, for it has placed the good of the other above the good of the self. Theology enters the picture in a different way from that envisaged by most commentators. As Karl Rahner observes, the person who has placed everything in the hands of God has no need to fear or to hide from the truth. God already knows it and has accepted the believer as he or she is. The symmetry of verses 6a and b is now apparent. No taint of evil can enhance or give pleasure to love where love is genuine. Love takes no pleasure in someone else's failure and delights in integrity and reality. If the situation is bad, love wants to help. If the situation is good, love wants to celebrate. It wants no hidden interests which disguise truth as something which it is not. Deleuze thinks this verse with the thought of verse 7 that love does not exaggerate, but it tries to understand. It bears with it. Okay? When we study personality types, and we studied the person who wants fairness, justice for all, that's a big part of my personality type. I have found myself, and this isn't Christian, this is just my personality, I have found myself in baseball games, basketball games, or whatever, wanting them, the referees, the umpires, to get it right, even though it goes against my team. Because I'm that personally dedicated to the right thing, for something to be done right, to be done with the truth. Okay, so that gives you a sense of that it doesn't matter if it works against our team, which would be the peer group here that he's talking about. I just want it to be right. I want it to be done the right way. I want the right call, the right whatever rule, interpretation, whatever it is. I wanted it to be done that way because that was the way it was supposed to be. Okay? That's the one personality type in the what was that thing that we used? Enneagram, yeah. Wants it to be done right. Well, that's an example of what agape love is here. It wants the truth no matter what the consequences are. Truth, despite any consequences, would probably be a way to do it. It celebrates the truth without any concern about the consequences to self. Okay. All right, now we're on to verse 7. So you have bears all things. Bears all things, okay. Our translation restructures the Greek syntax for two reasons, both of which concern the distinction between a logic of inclusion and a logic of exclusion in conveying the force of Paul's fourfold repetition of panta, or all things. First, this fourfold panta serves to convey the absence of all limits. It thus excludes the limits of agape rather than defining an all-inclusive content. The REB is the only major version to appreciate that this is best rendered in modern English by negating a series of negations. There is nothing love cannot face. It bears all things, okay? There's nothing that love cannot face.
What is the REB?
I don't even know which one. Rotherham, maybe? It might be Rotherham. Rotherham is an expanded version. I have to look and see if that's, I think I have, I don't know if I have a Rotherham here or not. I think it might be at home or in my other bookcase in my office. Anyway, all right, so there's nothing love cannot face. This is probably a good expression of the opposite. I can't take it anymore. Love doesn't say that. Love doesn't say, I can't take it anymore. So in concluding, or in completing this, he says, there's nothing love cannot face. There is no limit to its faith, its hope, its endurance. Collins says, it bears everything, it believes everything, it hopes everything, it endures everything. The traditional translations invite the kind of misunderstandings of Paul and indeed of Christianity which fuel the critiques of Feuerbach, Marx, Nietzsche, and Freud. The well-known authorized version, King James Version, and Revised Version, rendering bears all things, believes all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things, appears to support Marx's notion of Christianity as the opium of the people, or Nietzsche's concept of Christianity as servile mediocrity. Paul's notion of the cross and of love, Nietzsche asserts, has sided with everything weak, low, and botched. It has made an ideal out of antagonism towards strong life, the will to nothingness sanctified. For Nietzsche, Paul was full of superstition and cunning, for by reinterpreting language about the law, he became the destroyer of the law, and thereby of criteria other than self-construed outlooks. Morality itself was blown away, annihilated. I am above the law, thinks Paul, according to Nietzsche. If Paul enjoins his readers to bear, believe, hope, and endure everything, Nietzsche can say that truth has been turned topsy-turvy, transvaluation of all values, while Foucault can perceive it as the promotion of conformist docility, Marx as opium, and Freud as a projection derived from inner conflicts resolved by wishful thinking, which believes all things in order to endure all things. None of this, however, accords with Paul. It is Corinth which coins the slogan, all things are lawful. We reign as kings. It is Paul who insists on discrimination and differentiation, especially in prophecy and worship. Moreover, agape is precisely not docile or conformist. It does not seek a quiet life by servile mediocrity. Nygren's exposition of Paul's theology reveals the reverse. It is creative, innovative, transforming, and indifferent to returns in the sense of lacking the very interests on which the analysis of Feuerbach, Marx, Nietzsche, and Freud depend. Therefore, we must use the semantic strategy of protecting Paul's meaning by using a logic of negation as the least ambiguous way to exclude the partial as we shall also explore in 43 and 44, where similar logical and linguistic problems await us. Paul declares love never tires of support. It's another one for bears all thing. It never tires of, we would say, being supportive. And you can go ahead and, well, we'll get to all the rest of them. The fourfold never with four negative actions provides rhetorical force to Paul's fourfold all things, the panta, which clearly invites misunderstanding by readers in a post-Freudian, post-Nietzschean world. The REB offers a good precedent for this basic strategy. I'll have to look up REB here.
It's, Revised English Bible.
Oh, Revised English, okay. Didn't have anything to do with Rotherham, okay. Yet again, the precise semantic range of at least one of the verbs remains in question. The meaning of stegei remains open to debate. Lexicographers and exegetes generally agree that the cognate form of stego, or roof, offers a starting point, but this may be connected with the verb stego in one of several ways. It may mean to cover, as a roof covers a house. In Biblical Greek, the verb occurs only in Eklos 8:17, and that'd be Ecclesiastes and the Septuagint. In 1 Corinthians 9:4 and 1 Thessalonians 3:1 and 5. In 8:17 Ecclesiastes, logon stegei means to conceal the matter. This would then accord with the maxim, charity shall cover the multitude of sins in 1 Peter 4:8. Conzelman uses cover in his translation and suggests in his exegesis that stegei means either to draw a veil of silence over or to bear. The latter receives some support from Paul's use of the verb in 1 Corinthians 9:4, where it means to bear in the sense to put up with. Okay? So love puts up with all things. But it's generally agreed this is not a frequent meaning of the verb. Bauer, Gingrich, and Delitzsch conclude that perhaps in 13:7 stegei means love throws a cloak of silence over what is displeasing in another person. It doesn't take account of a person's wrongs. But we've already pretty much covered that, right? We've already had that before. Several versions associate stegei with roof in the sense to protect rather than to cover. Rather supporting, of bearing in the sense of carrying or supporting, rather than to put up with. The NIV renders always protects. New Revised Standard plays a lexicographically safe but theologically dangerous game with bears all things. New Jerusalem Bible expands the covering theme with it is always ready to make allowances, which embodies a notion of support. Whitaker attempted to preserve the roof imagery by suggesting love springs no leak. Godet, following Bengel, urges that to bear in the sense to put up with is tautologous in relation to hupomeniai, and hence means to cover in the sense of to excuse. Spick and more recently Lang have put forward exactly this argument to conclude that it means to cover. Our understanding is closest to that of Meyer, Barrett, and Schrag. Citing the Vulgate, Seufert, Meyer proposes a distinction between stegei and hupomeniai. The latter sustains its support in putting up with everything for a limitless duration. The former supports a limitless load. So hupomene, to bear up, to long suffering, to remain under, okay, means that it can take anything. And then this one speaks about how long it can put up with it. Schrage thinks Seufert with sustene, support, well conveys this with a clearer hint at the structure which supports the roof than bear. Barrett adds yet further weight to support by appealing to the tradition of the Jewish Mishnah stemming from Simeon the Just that service is support of the world. Kierkegaard's analogy of a mother's love which ceaselessly gives support to her child is helpfully noted by Schrage. Before we complete our interpretation of the remaining verbs, Meyer's exegesis and our proposed translation lend weight to the assumption which lies behind the debate between Stewart and Walters, that here love is Paul, i.e. Paul perceives himself as so manifesting his love and concern for Corinth as the other, that this love never tires of support. Never tires of support. Never loses faith, never exhausts hope, never gives up. Neither writer considers this chapter in the detail explored here. Basically, Stewart finds a manipulative strategy in Paul by defining love in terms of that relate more closely to his own values than those of the gifts at Corinth. Paul collectively claims to be the paradigm through whom God's love is experienced. Walters attacks and rejects the argument about manipulation, mainly on the ground that Paul associates love with truth and disinterested concern in principle rather than in personal terms. But neither disputes that Paul himself seeks to live out what he ascribes to love in 1 Corinthians 13. Stewart's approach, it need hardly be said, brings us back to power issues shared by Wire, Castelli, and Foucault. Wire asserts Paul's sharp contrast of this love to the exercise of all spiritual gifts suggests that the Corinthian prophet's highest value may be seen by reversing these verbs. They no longer suffer, but zealously pursue a new life, not orientating themselves kindly on others' needs, but rejoicing in what the Spirit has done in them. Thus, Wire returns to reading Paul as Feuerbach and Nietzsche do. Paul is the dull proponent of servile mediocrity, while the Corinthian women prophets dare to exhibit the Spirit's creativity. The women prophets of Corinth are on another social trajectory than Paul, and with a different experience of Christ, a different social practice and theological integrity. Castelli does not directly address 1 Corinthians 13, but if Wire, Stewart, and others are right, as we agree, in discerning a barely veiled description of Paul's own goals, then all of Castelli's observations about the link between Pauline mimesis and Foucault's notions of power and conformity come into play. However, it must be emphasized that the traditional translations of 13:7 add fuel to the fire and give more hostages to their arguments than is necessary. At all costs, we must hold to the demonstration, primarily in Nygren, but also in Spick, that for agape to be manipulatory and concerned for its own interest would be a logical contradiction of huge proportions. For Paul's personal relation to this verse, we refer to the discussions of Wiskmeyer, Blair, and others. To translate Ponta Pistuii as never loses faith meets Calvin's points, not that a Christian strips himself of wisdom and discernment, not that he has forgotten how to distinguish black from white, but in the absence of our explicating a logic of negated exclusion rather than universal inclusion, even Calvin speaks of being rid of ill-founded suspicion, and Spick of giving a favorable interpretation of everything. Okay? Never loses faith. Okay? Does not indulge in ill-founded suspicion. What's that person's motive? Why is he treating me like this? Why is he saying that? Okay? Giving a favorable interpretation of everything. Favorable interpretation. Believing the best about all people. But Barrett writes, not always believes the best about people, but never loses faith. Whether we accept Heinrichi's interpretation as belief in the invincible power of good depends on whether this implies human good, which would be eros, or the transformative power of divine agape, which does provide grounds for never loses faith in Paul's thought. The closely parallel never exhausts hope scarcely requires further explanation. Faith and hope come to be associated with love. Finally, hupomeniai refers to an endurance of setbacks and rebuffs which never gives up on people, whatever they do. Okay? So never loses faith, never gives a favorable interpretation of everything, never exhausts hope, and never gives up on people. Like Christ on the cross, love endures scorn, failure, ingratitude. At the end shines out the light of Passover. For love never ends. The eschatological permanence of love. The end of verse 7 leads into the main thrust of this section. If love always perseveres or never gives up, that applies at an interpersonal level, is now applied at a deeper level, at the cosmic level of Pauline and Christian eschatology. Ho agape, pseuda pote, piptei. The explicit comparison with spiritual gifts now also becomes eschatological and temporal. Epiptei, together with many other Western texts, falls. The latter is the firm reading. On the difference of nuance, see below. While other witnesses read gnosis for knowledge, A reads the plural gnosis. This is probably for stylistic symmetry with the plural of prophecies and tongues. Okay, if they'll cease. Okay, love never gives up on people. All right, so you got everything? Got them all? Yeah? Yeah, you got every one of those? Do you have any blanks?
Are you talking about the entire
Filling in.
pages?
Yeah, filling in those fine.
Well, I mean, I've got,
Wait a minute. Okay, why don't you understand? What you do not comprehend?
Why so many people had to say the wrong of the love bears all things before we got to the point of what love bears all things is.
If you notice that the first hour I skipped through all those because we'd covered them before, but this hour, since they were things that we hadn't covered last week, I went ahead and went through the whole arguments. Probably shouldn't have done that, huh? Okay. So what's the first one? Bears all things?
yeah.
Okay, what do you have for that?
Oh my gosh, you want us to read everything you read?
Well, what makes you understand it?
Bottom line.
Yeah, get to the bottom line. Huh?
Never tires of being supportive.
Never tires of being supportive.
Never exhausts hope, never gives up.
Okay. What's next? Never loses faith.
Believes all things.
You want to go backwards?
Nothing.
I got confused about where bears all things moved into believes all things and stuff. So I think I put a whole lot under bears all things and don't know where it kind of.
Okay.
What did we end with right here? What did you just?
Bears all things would be never gives up, never tires of support.
Did we do endures all things, love never ends, hopes all things, and believes? Did we do all that in all this last stuff?
Yep.
I didn't get it.
You missed it.
We
Mine
didn't
all-
specify.
Mine
Okay, now we're
ended up
talking
all
about
under one thing.
Mine too.
Okay, well, see, he handled this last section. He did all of them together in there. And so, okay, so you have bears all things. Never gives up. Never.
Throws a cloak of silence over what is displeasing in another.
Okay, yep, that's still good. That still bears all things.
So there was a debate in terms of bearing up versus a roof covering.
Covering, which basically it's the same. I mean, they're,
You can interpret it both ways.
yeah, it's
Both
both are correct. It's like pleroo, which has four meanings: to fill up, a deficiency, to overflow.
all
so-
of that.
Yeah, so all of them apply. They're all. It's like me looking. Well, it'd be like you looking at a modern dictionary and looking at the synonyms, and you picking one and me picking another one. They're saying the same thing. They're just saying it in different ways, but it is part of the meaning of the word.
And we can have slightly different nuances.
Nuances, yeah. And that's why you want those nuances, because that helps you for this situation. This nuance is going to apply. That situation, a different nuance will apply.
It's not
All
really
right.
so much an argument of what's right and what's not right. It's all right.
Yeah, it's all right. It's just
Except all
which
the
way you.
Nietzsche and stuff
Right,
there,
yeah.
that would all-
Yeah, Nietzsche and Freud
Yeah,
and all.
I think Paul's a big scumbag.
Yeah.
That has
Oh,
all
yeah.
these motives underlying when he's
Yeah.
writing something that the Bible says is spirit led.
Right. Okay, so you have bears all things. All right. What? Well, let's use you, Stephanie, since you have everything written under bears all things. What's next?
Well, I have to remain under, holds up under, and unceasing load. Ceases
Okay, that's-
to give support. Never tires of support. Then I moved on to believes all things because I wasn't sure where we were, and I've got never gives up on people, never exhausts hope, and never loses faith. And I don't know what that actually goes under. So
Okay. Well, never gives up on people. That's faith. That's believes all things. Bears all things.
so I do have that in the
And
right
also
spot.
I had believing the best about people.
Believing the best about people.
Okay, can you say those two things again?
Probably not, but I'll try.
Never gives up on people as part of believes all things.
Hey, you
Right.
can't talk while she's talking, because then I don't know what she's saying. I'm sorry.
Okay. Which one do you want, hers or mine? I mean, first. Which one do you want first?
She got it right.
Believes the best in people.
Okay. Never gives up on people was another.
I don't think it said it in there, but I was thinking in terms of giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, believing the best means you give them the benefit of the doubt.
So I don't have anything under hopes all things, endures all things, or love never ends. So
And I had stuff under hopes all things, but realized it should have been under endures all things.
Okay, endures all thing is the never gives up on people.
oh. The endures all things is never gives up on
No, that's three different things.
So I didn't actually have anything under hopes all things.
Hopes all things. Okay. It never exhausts hope.
Yeah.
Okay. It's always, all right, let's do it this way. It is always optimistic.
Because are we using the Greek word for hope, like where we,
Pistis.
where you expect it?
Mm.
Now, in a spiritual sense, how does that work? I mean, you got people that have a personality that's very optimistic. So, in a spiritual sense, we're not talking about personality of somebody who's an optimistic person. How does that play out? That optimistic.
Well, it plays out in your situation that you're in. Okay, you're supporting. Okay, that's why all these run together like this.
Towards other people
You're
because
supporting
it's
other
agape,
people.
so-
Yeah, you're supporting them. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You see that you look at the best possible motivation that they would have. That's believes all things. Okay, and then what was that? Hopes all things. That you anticipate the right outcome rather than a bad outcome in the relationship. Okay.
So where does it get into always looking, through rose-colored glasses kind of thing, where that's just, there's people that will look at things in an optimistic way when it really there's more realistic look at it. The difference between when it's, I guess there's a
Okay.
spiritual sense of it, and then there's the fleshly sense of it that you can do, and I think that's hard to understand in this.
The rose-colored glasses that's a person who is unrealistically unrealistic expectation. Okay. We're talking about, well, bears all things, supports, believes. That's what do we say for that?
Believes best in people, never gives. Believes
The
the best
best.
of all people.
Yeah, there was a kind of a single word I thought that we had for that.
I didn't have one. I've never used it,
Okay.
and I think that's
Well, let's just
better.
do. I like best motivation. Okay. That remember what I said over the course of the study that. Well, let's use this one. Stop and think to yourself, why would a person who loves me say that or do that? Okay? Sees the best motivation ties in with that. Okay? Just to give it away before we get to that point. Okay? Believes the best motivation. Okay? Not, you see, it goes back to a lot to that keeping a record. Okay? That you don't say, oh yeah, here she goes again. You say, no, she's doing this because she doesn't understand respect, or he's doing this because he doesn't, he's missing the point on loving me. But sees the best motivation. He's trying. He wants to. That kind of thing. As opposed to this is just unrealistic expectation. Pollyanna, everything's going to work out in the end. Everything will be just fine, kind of thing. This is about a circumstance or a situation.
So would a good example be when Christ is on the cross and he says, "Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do."
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Because he sees the truth.
The ignorance is present, and he knows
Right.
that, and he's saying he's recognizing that they're clueless.
Right. All right, so we got bears, we got believes. Are we happy with bears and believes?
Yes.
Okay, so next we need hopes. Okay. You all ought to know that from pistis, right? Expects. Okay. So, I'm in a situation with another person, and I'm trying to be loving and walk by means of the Spirit in this. So I support by faith. I see the best motivation in the person by faith, and I expect by faith that me doing the right thing is going to bring out the right result. It's going to work, okay? Expects it to work. Okay? See, our word hope, it just always messes us up. Because
Faith to work.
well, expect doing this by faith to work. We don't expect faith to work because faith is a verb. Faith is what you do when you believe it, right? So you expect it to work. You don't say, well, I'm going to do this, but I know how he is, and he's a scumbag, and this is going to turn out the same way it always does. That's not agape. Agape expects it to work because I'm doing the right thing. God says you do the right thing, he'll reward you, right? And now the reward may not be that person straightening out, but you're doing the right thing. You expect God to work in the situation. So, okay. And then what's the last one? Endures, or is the last one endures?
Endurance or setbacks and rebuffs.
Never gives up trying or obeying. Okay? Doesn't matter how many times my wife treats me badly, I still, by faith, I will do it again. I don't give up. Okay? Because love doesn't give up. Agape doesn't give up. It keeps on going. When think of it in terms of Jesus. When would Jesus have given up in his ministry if he did not agape everyone? Agape endures. First day, right? Okay, every day he would give up if he didn't agape them, right? Because they were all idiots and scumbags and evil and hurtful, and I mean anything you can say. The way they treated him, they treated him in every bad way possible. But because he agapied them, he endured all of that and kept on obeying his mission. Okay? We would say trying because we're not perfect like he was, so we can't just say that he was perfect obeying, and we're perfect obeying because we're not perfect. But we keep on doing what God says to do throughout all of this. You have to keep this in context. This is all about agape, not about a rose-colored glasses view of life. It's all about agape. All the things of agape work together. Okay? Love is patient, it's kind, it's gentle, it's all those things. So it's all in context with itself. That's why these four are kind of at the end, and summarize that if you took if you took agape, patient, right? Give me another one. Kind, okay. Give me another one. Give me another one. Where did we go from
Sorry.
we went from agape to fruit of the Spirit now. Just look at your notes and read them off from the back one.
You got does not envy after kind.
Okay. Doesn't envy, doesn't brag.
Not arrogant, not rude.
Okay, we got that. Okay. Not arrogant. What else?
Not insist on its own way. Oh, sorry. After arrogance is rude.
Okay. It doesn't matter which order here.
Rejoices in truth.
Not irritable. Not resentful. Not rejoice at wrongdoing. Bears all things.
Okay. Make all of these a building blocks. Didn't quite make good mortar joints. Okay. Now, this is the foundation. Okay. It bears all things. It never tires of support. See, all of these things are about supporting the other person. Doesn't seek its own way. It rejoices in the truth. Doesn't rejoice in wrongdoing. Okay, all of this is all the things. It bears all of it. It bears all. It believes all. Okay. all good. That's all panta is all is, but it's referring to good. It hopes, it expects, right? And it endures. Okay, these four are the foundation for all of those others. Okay? These four are the foundation for all of those others. All right, let's go with gentle. Okay. Well, you can't keep being gentle without the foundation of expects. Okay? You can't be patient without bears all things, okay, supports, endures. Okay? You have to have these. When these look weak, okay, when you don't see that, well, of course, arrogance, but when you don't see that person not being irritable at some point in the future, if it workings where that person is not going to be irritating, okay, you can't maintain not getting irritated. Okay, you give up. Okay, if you're not bearing all things, if you're not believing that it's going to work, if you're not expecting it, if believing the best about people, if you're not expecting that it works, or you're not enduring, then you can't do those. So that's this is the building of agape, the way I see it, and this is the foundation of that building. You have to go back and forth. Okay, kindness. I got to believe the best about that person for me to continue to be kind to them in the face of they just keep doing it wrong. Okay? So rather than looking at these as individual parts of agape, look at them as being how you are able to sustain all of these others. Okay? So I would call these, I guess, the sustaining power of agape. The sustaining power of agape bears all things, does not tire of giving support, believes the best about people, hopes or expects things to work the way God has told us that they will, and endures it no matter how long it takes. It endures it. Patience is how hard it is. Endures is how long. Okay? Okay? It's really hard because it's really bad. Or it's really hard because it just happens over and over and over again. Okay? So you have to be able to have that foundation. I can take it no matter how many times. How many times my husband mistreats me. How many times my wife disrespects me. I can take it because by faith I'm being patient. I'm being kind. I'm not seeking my own way. That help? Have any questions? Everyone know who Kierkegaard and Nietzsche and all those people all those people are? Okay? You get the concept? Okay. So when being kind to your spouse is hard, then you got to look at the foundation. Never tiring of support, never thinking bad about the person. Always expecting that it's going to work, that love will win that person. Remember what both Peter and who else was it? Paul and Timothy said, you will win them by to the women whose husbands are either non-believers or not living by the word. You will win them by the way you live. That's what has to happen down there. You expect it. God said you will win them. no matter how long it takes. All right? And we'll see that when we go through individual aspects of how there is disrespect and unloving statements and actions. And we see these all apply in those different circumstances. Okay? You could just about, and I subconsciously, unconsciously did a lot of the magic keys are based on these. So we'll probably end up with this many magic keys when we get down. All right, well, we didn't get to fruit of the Spirit, but we'll get to that next week. And bring these notes back because I don't know what all you have written. So bring them back with you so that you have them so that we can use them in our discussions, all right? That's your assignment. Go over them, try to make sense out of each of those. Try to think of circumstances where one or the other would be appropriate. All right? Because you have to remember, the scriptures say, the just shall live by faith. By faith. This is all faith. I can have a patient personality. Doesn't do me a bit of good, right? Because that's what? Human good. It's human good, something that God is going to bless and something that God is going to reward you for at the Bema seat? No. That's wood, hay, and stubble. Your personality is your human nature. Okay? It's what you do by faith that counts. By faith. So you have to choose when the circumstance arises. When the circumstance arises, in your mind, you have the whatever the issue is. We'll call it an issue. When the issue enters your mind, then guarding this, your volition valve, okay, your choice valve, is your epinosis in your heart. This is your heart, okay? Cardia in the Greek. This is nous or mind in the Greek, okay? All right. This is pistis or faith in the Greek when you make your choice. So the issue comes in, my husband is acting unloving. So unloving comes in here. Okay? So you have to make a choice about how you're going to either react or respond to his unloving words that he has said. And your epinosis, you're going in your 7 compartments of your stream of consciousness, SOC, stream of consciousness. You have in there, you have patience, you have kindness, you have believes all things, okay, all those things. All of the aspects of agape, so we'll just call it all agape. Okay? You have agape there, and then you have to pick what part of agape you're going to choose to believe in your relationship with his unloving. Okay? Because you can let unloving come into your heart, and what's that going to cause? Everything from irritation, exasperation, to hate. Right? Because they're all steps towards hate. Irritation is a step towards hatred. Exasperation is a step towards hatred. Okay? You can let unloving come in, or you can block it with, let's just say, we'll pick one, patience. patience blocks unloving from coming in. Okay? Because you're not going to be, okay, because this is all, what's in your heart's going to go over to your emotions. That's your splanchna, your kidneys. In the Bible, we call it heart, but heart is the part of your soul in the Bible. Emotions are part of your kidneys or your bowels, okay, in the Greek. Okay? And so whatever you allow to come in here into your heart is going to create an emotion. Right? And so if you let unloving in, that's going to create an emotion. Irritable bowels, that's right. You could have irritable bowel syndrome. All right? So you've got to block that from coming in by believing that my husband is unloving. What are you going to do instead? Believe the best about? Why would a man who loves me say that to me? Because he's an idiot, right? He doesn't understand. He doesn't know. So I'm going to have patience. I'm going to believe the best about him. And I'm going to, by faith, I'm going to use patience. I'm going to believe it. And I'm going to react with, or I'm going to respond with kindness, which in the case of the man would be respect. Bless you. So that's how it works. So if you have an emotion, if your feelings get hurt, is that agape? No. So if your feelings are hurt, what have you failed to do? To agape by faith. So that means you got to back up. You got to confess it. Father, I let my feelings get hurt by what he said. Okay? You confessed it. You're back in the Spirit. And then you have to choose. You put off and put on. Guess we need some more of that, don't we? Guess we need to go over that a few weeks. All right. Well, we'll see specific examples because we're going to go through, all the different examples I gave you throughout about a man and a woman and what the way they went. Well, we're going to go through those and we're going to pick how you respond in those. And you automatically know how you're going to respond is by faith. Okay? Then you have to have something that you are trusting, not God, His Word. Now the specific of His resources that He's given you. What part of agape or fruit of the Spirit is going to be involved. All right. Okay. Well, I see. What's that new commercial where the cowboy crook goes into the store and he says, "Give me all your money," and the guy hits the button on the cash register and he says, "Sorcery," and their heads explode. Yeah, is that insurance commercial or something? Anyway, but all their heads explode and then they got rigid. Heads, top of their heads are missing. I see heads exploding. Overload exploding there, okay? All right, so that means it's time to quit, and then we'll pick up and we'll go from there. So another thing you want to do on your last page, very back there, is it all filled? Oh, okay, very back page is, at some place, write down your questions about these. How do they relate? What relates to this kind of a situation? What relates to that kind of a situation? So we can go over those. All right? Okay, let's pray. Father, we're grateful for your word. We're grateful that you have given us life, and that life is your life, and that everything we have is because we have been born of the Spirit. And as being born of the Spirit, we have the fruit of the Spirit. We have everything we need to live with other people the way Jesus would live with these same people. We do not lack anything in our resources that you have provided us. We can do it. We just need to know how each part of it relates to what's going on in our life, so that we recognize instantaneously what we need, so that it's not a surprise to us when someone treats us in a particular way, but it triggers immediately the response of the Spirit. So we ask that you show us in everyday experiences how these things work, how we can choose you, the thoughts that you give us, the love that you give us, instead of reacting with arrogance, having our feelings hurt, keeping records, all of the things that we've talked about. We thank you for it and ask that you bless our time together in Jesus'